They buried him without a coffin, just wrapped in a cloth, and we all knew Lekan died so we could live. I grew up with Lekan in the same compound. Our families were tied together. His father had 3 wives, mine had 2, and poverty tied us all tighter than blood ever could. Lekan was the first son of the 3rd wife, the forgotten wife, as people whispered. The one who cooked last when there was barely enough to go around. Even as a boy, Lekan didn't get much. His father favored the children of the first wife. His siblings, 6 of them, each hungrier than the next, looked up to him like he was a magician who could conjure food. But there was no magic, only a boy who refused to let them starve. When we turned 12, some of us got to stay in school, while others had to drop out. Lekan was one of those others. He didn't complain, though. Instead, he started hustling. Carrying loads at the market, running errands for traders, and sometimes, even standing in the hot sun selling water in sachets. "I can't afford to fail," he told me once, his voice steady. "If I stop, they stop eating." By the time we were 16, Lekan was the man of his family. His father was barely around, and when he was, he came empty-handed. The other wives called Lekan's mother a curse because they said her children were bad luck. But Lekan was the one carrying the weight of them all. He made sure his siblings stayed in school. How? I don't know. He never had enough to eat himself, but somehow, their uniforms stayed clean, and their books weren't empty. Once, I asked him why he didn't just leave. "They'll make it one day," he said simply. "Maybe then my life will mean something." But hardship doesn't care how good you are. When Lekan turned 20, his mother fell ill. The kind of illness where you need real money for doctors. Lekan couldn't afford it, and the sickness dragged on for months. His hustles weren't enough. That's when I noticed him growing thinner, quieter. One night, I saw him giving his siblings the last of the gari while he drank just water. His eyes caught mine, but he didn't say anything. He just smiled, the way he always did when things were hard. Then came the night of the robbery. A gang came to our compound looking for money, and no one had any to give. They started beating people, dragging men and boys outside. Lekan stepped forward before they got to his siblings. "Take me," he said, his voice calm like he wasn't afraid. They took him. We didn't see him for weeks. When he finally came back, his body was battered, and his spirit was gone. He said nothing about what had happened, but he couldn't walk properly anymore. Still, he kept walking. A few months later, he collapsed in the market. By the time they brought him home, he was too weak to talk. His siblings cried around him, and all he said was, "Keep going. Don't stop. Make it worth it." Lekan died that night. Today, his siblings are grown. One is a teacher, one is a nurse, and another runs a small business in the city. They remember him every time they succeed. Lekan wasn't supposed to rise, and maybe he didn't in the way the world measures success. But he lifted everyone around him, even as he sank. His life taught me that strength isn't in what you gain but in what you give. And sometimes, the greatest love is sacrifice, even when no one remembers your name.